Did you ever go to a theme park and suddenly find yourself questioning your entire life? I don't mean when you're standing in a long line in 4,000-degree heat, regretting every choice that led you to that moment. That happens all the time. I'm talking about having a theme park experience that was so unique, so refreshing, and so inspiring that it completely shook you out of your routine and made you just be present for a moment. That's exactly what happened to me at Epic Universe. And if Universal's experiment works, it'll happen to you too. This is Joe Rohde. If you've never heard of him, he was a designer on or lead creative behind some of the best Disney attractions and experiences in the country, including the Aulani Resort in Oahu and Disney's Animal Kingdom in Orlando. Joe's a guy who completely, unabashedly, and passionately embraces everything that makes a theme park special. I'm bringing him up not just because he rules, but because he's very smart, generally right about everything, and most importantly, agrees with me. A few days after I went to Epic Universe for the first time, and I was still trying to figure out how to put my thoughts on it into words, Joe listened to some of the executives who helped bring the park to life and took notes about the things they said that stuck with him. In those hastily typed out thoughts, he completely articulated the points I was struggling to find the words for, and those thoughts are going to make the perfect end to this video. But first, I want you to take the journey with me. My initial reaction to Epic Universe after experiencing it was that it was everything I hoped it would be and nothing at all what I expected. I was hoping that would be a profound summation of the day, but it was more like the mayonnaise of reviews. A bland reaction that didn't really convey any specific point of view or evoke any sort of deep feelings. In reality, it took a few days, weeks really, to let the experience marinate and allow me to come up with a more meaningful explanation. Before I got there, I knew the basics of the park, but steered clear of all the spoilery details. And I heard the early reactions, the nearly unanimous praise of the creative and the food, and the oft-recurring critiques of everything else. But both the good and the bad assessments I came across, especially in that first month or two after opening, were coming from theme park nerds like me. And that's cool and all, but us nerds make up but a fraction of the visiting public. To get a better sense of Epic's long-term potential, I wanted to know what a regular Joe would think. A real person. Someone who is most likely only watching this video because they know me in real life. For that perspective, I turned to my hater-ass friend Christina. Christina likes, but not loves, a theme park. She also buys generic brand Lucky Charms to save $1. Scrunchies, Marshmallow Dreams, really? She and her family got to go to Epic Universe before I did, and what was her response upon return? It was overrated. Overrated? Really? Come on, there's no way! Of all the critiques I heard, low capacity, too much downtime, not enough shade, I hadn't heard anyone say overrated. It did make me curious though. Was this, and this was my gut reaction, just another instance of hater-ass Christina being a hater? Or was it indicative of a bigger problem, that Epic Universe in all of its grandeur just wasn't clicking with guests? After visiting, I can honestly say, I think it's a little bit of both. When you go to a theme park, what's your main reason for going? I know different circumstances may lead to different answers, but generally speaking, which one of these are you? Are you the type that wants to have a fun-filled but leisurely day, soaking in the vibes and seeing where the wind takes you? Or is it more about going in with a plan and trying to ride every attraction you can before they throw you out? If I had to guess, most people who go to these parks are probably the latter. Let's leave locals out of the mix for now and talk strictly about tourists. If you're heading to Orlando for a big trip, it ain't cheap. You're spending money on flights and hotels and meals and park tickets and who knows when you'll even be back. So you want to do everything. And that's understandable. I have kids, so I bought the Express Pass for our days at Epic for that exact reason, to give them the best chance to see and do literally everything that the park had to offer. But if you think about it, that philosophy of running from ride to ride, crossing off attractions like chores on a to-do list, it wasn't always like that. A lot of enthusiasts will cite Epcot as their favorite theme park. Epcot famously, especially in its early years, didn't have a lot of rides. But what it did have was World Showcase, a collection of country-themed pavilions that still inspire awe in guests over 40 years later. The experience in World Showcase is mostly about exploring, finding little shops, eating unique foods from abroad, and seeing how many drinks you can throw back before it gets problematic. Then, 2 decades later, we were treated to Disney's Animal Kingdom, another breathtaking park that was just as much, if not more, about exploration and discovery than it was about riding down watery cliffs in a raft. Of course, over time, the parks got popular, and the more people that visited, the longer the lines got, so they had to make more rides to add capacity and level things out. But as the things to do exponentially expanded and the prices to do those things soared, the sentiment kind of shifted from, as long as I do this one thing I'll be happy, to, as long as I do the new thing I'll be happy, to, I've paid so much to get here, we better do every single thing in every park, otherwise I didn't get my money's worth. Because the reality is, there's only so much time in a day, and while 14 hours might seem like a long time, in a theme park, when you're waiting on lines and stopping to eat and doing whatever else you do, it flies by. It became far more difficult and less practical to enjoy a more balanced approach to a day in the park. Doing stuff was now the priority. Everything else was a nice to have and, eventually, a rare to have. Our behaviors collectively changed, approaching a day in the park like we would a day of yard work. Getting things done as quickly as we could and not having a chance to really soak it in until we looked at our trip reports afterwards. And now, at the height of our franticness, Epic Universe opened, with 5 new lands, about a dozen groundbreaking rides, 2 live stage shows, and a whole bunch of shops and restaurants. So how are we going to motor through all this in one day? Well, for multiple reasons, you can't. Epic Universe is a park that doesn't just encourage us, it forces us to slow down. The lore of Epic Universe revolves around the Celestians, a people who live in the park's central hub who travel the galaxy and have opened portals up to other worlds. Most modern theme parks have a connective passage that takes you around in a circle from land to land, but at Epic Universe, that's impossible. You have to leave an area completely, re-enter the central hub, and then walk through that central hub to the next area. That means running from ride to ride is kind of impossible because there's no shortcut. You have to take the long way. I thought the Celestial Park land was just a little area with the roller coaster, but it's like the totality of everything that's not inside a portal. Even as the central hub, I was kind of shocked by its expansiveness, but even more so by the amount of space that just had nothing. And I don't say that in a disparaging way, in that it looked empty or sparse or anything like that. What I mean is they were areas to just sit and take in the views and the sounds and the smells. Epic Universe has bountiful respites throughout the chaos of the theme park. Places where you can just rest or recharge or enjoy a moment before heading off to go do whatever it is you're doing next. And at first, that was jarring, because the idea of having any time whatsoever to just chill in a theme park had become so foreign to me, I couldn't even really comprehend it. The more I explored, though, the more it made sense. Now, I was fortunate enough to go to Epic Universe for 2 days, which I understand kind of undermines the whole point I'm making, but hear me out. The first day, we were on a strict schedule. We had about 2 hours per land if we wanted to get through everything. And while that may seem like a lot of time, the pace was pretty hectic. If that was my only time at Epic Universe, I'd feel content since we burned through pretty much everything. But as an experience, was that the best way to enjoy the park? So on the second day, I decided to deprioritize everything. Even the stuff I really liked and probably wouldn't have a chance to do again anytime soon, for years even, in favor of taking my time, of going slow, not having an agenda, and soaking in all the thought and the creativity and the detail that made the place so special. And that day was so much more enjoyable. Let's take a moment to go through the rest of the lands. Isle of Berk, the How to Train Your Dragon land, has the most things to do. 3 rides, a kid's playground, a live show, a meet and greet, but the details are just as amazing. The portal effect is great. They don't all need a paragraph of exposition on a rock like this one has, but here, it makes sense. Much like the rest of Epic Universe, every single inch of this land is immaculately themed, and I can't think of a single spot that makes you think, oh, this was supposed to be something cool, but the budget probably got cut. There's plenty of rockwork like this that lines the foliage and gives you a nice spot to relax and enjoy the atmosphere. The warning signs are themed. The wayfaring signs are intricate. Even the Coke freestyle machines are weathered and have an exclusive soda. Love that. They've got this crank that harkens back to the little puppet show in Disneyland's Fantasyland. No ROI on this thing except pure enjoyment. You've got dragon tails that do nothing except add a little kinetic energy. Dragons live in this world, so we see dragons just living in the world. There's custom benches that look like dragons. people dryers with dragon butts sticking out because they're warming you with their fire breath. The water station is dragon spit? I ran into these two Vikings who were walking around being playfully brash. But there's a whole bunch of them to run into, and they're genuinely funny every time. Every turn, every find, they're all interesting. The lighting structures are real wood, or real wood texture at least, I'm no arborist. Like, one of the little things that got me was this area back here. The bridge has real rope. That could easily be the fake plastic looks like rope kind of thing, but nah dog, this is real. It's a masterpiece. Honestly, the only criticism of this land that I've seen is because of the sightlines, you can see the track for a roller coaster called Stardust Racers that's located in a different part of the park, and that kills the immersiveness of being in Berk. Sure. But my take, the lore of Stardust Racers is that you're riding a comet, so if you're believing that you're riding a comet, you kind of have to suspend disbelief and imagine the track isn't even there. Let's move on. Next, you've got the Ministry of Magic, the Harry Potter or Fantastic Beasts area. I don't know, it doesn't matter. It's absolutely bonkers. Looking around at Celestial Park and then walking through the portal, you legitimately feel like you transported. Like magic. Get it? That archway is wildly impressive in real life. Walking down the street, it looks like those should be pressboard facades with a paint skyline, but it's practical and immaculate. Not since Epcot could you walk through what feels like a literal city. Forget forced perspective, these buildings are towering over you. When I was there, it was decorated for the holidays, and it was done so elegantly. During the day, you could almost miss it. And at night, it honestly reminded me of my days in New York City during Christmas time. For a few moments, it felt like an exact replica. A couple of drinks in, suddenly I'm on Fifth Avenue. The ability to explore around this land, appreciating every nook and cranny, it can't be understated. You could easily spend half a day here just checking out the spells, the shops, the windows, the alleyways, the Easter eggs. These plaques. They're not like plastic or thin metal. These are sturdy, weathered, perfect. The paintings in the window will talk to you in real time. This is not a new effect, but it's a great one, and it's tucked away enough that if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. If you know the source material well, or speak French, I bet this is amazing. But really, as someone who does neither, I can't get over how beautiful these buildings are. It feels like it just goes on and on forever. We probably spent more time in the area than any of the others, and I was never once bored. There was always something interesting to look at, a character to interact with, and the wild part is they're already planning an expansion. Crazy. All of this, and I haven't even mentioned the show, which is great, or the ride, which honestly set a bar for themed queues that might never be matched. Is it worth mentioning that I think Dolores Umbridge is kind of a babe? Yeah, you know what? I think it is. But if I'm talking about the ride, I have to talk about its criticisms. It has ungodly wait times, usually around 3 hours, which is apparently due in part to unreliable ride ops. All I can say is this. I experienced no issues with downtime on both visits, and I thought the ride was fantastic. Your mileage is going to vary. Because at the time of this video, the park is barely over 6 months old, and there absolutely are kinks to work out. The mix of tons of hype, which I know I'm contributing to, creating impossible expectations, and really long wait times is the perfect setup for a subpar experience. But that's really the point of all this. I think the experience at Epic Universe is so much more than the sum of its parts. I honestly don't think that anything there is a must-do, in the sense that whatever you do is probably going to be, at worst, pretty awesome. And if you decide to skip the 3-hour line for Battle at the Ministry and instead spend that time exploring other things, I truly believe that's a pretty even trade-off. So let's keep moving. Dark Universe, the land I spent the least amount of time in and zero time at night because I have a child who is unreasonably afraid of it. But even in the daytime, it's just unbelievably done. Walking through the portal, there's instant place setting. Right outside the town of Darkmoor's namesake sign, a cemetery with one wilted rose. It feels like walking through a village, or really an elaborate movie set of a village straight out of the film. And that's not a knock, it's a testament to how truly transported you feel. We only scooted by the Invisible Man, but there are a bunch more walkabout characters to interact with that we would have seen if we spent more time there. Dark Universe's main attraction seems to be universally beloved, but its presence alone looms so large over the area, it's pretty amazing just to see its exterior close up. Over at the Burning Blade Tavern, whose blades were burning if not spinning, there were so many little intricacies, and bartenders who were more than happy to fill you in on the lore of the place. Of course, you have weathered tap handles, and the best beer in the park, in my opinion, the Reaper's Reserve. The outside area was a great and quiet little spot if you needed a break. While we were sitting, a monster hunter approached us and tried to assure our frightened child that there was nothing to be fearful of. The best. It might not be as expansive as the previous area, but with a more willing child, I could have definitely done more exploring. I'm sure I missed a ton. And finally, Super Nintendo World, a land full of kinetic energy and chaos. When Sweet Boy Dallin of the Offhand Disney YouTube channel reviewed this, he said he was overstimulated. And before seeing it for myself, I thought it was just because he's a sensitive young man who prefers the calm of people movers and living with the land. But it is a lot. It's pretty perfectly replicating the insanity of actually living in the Mushroom Kingdom, which is amazing if you're 8 years old or a longtime fan like me. When I say it's the closest you could actually be to stepping inside a video game, I'm not exaggerating. They've taken something impossible and somehow made it real. Everywhere you look, you are super served with little nods and Easter eggs. I guess, Yoshi eggs? That reward you for a lifetime of fandom. The queue for the Mario Kart ride especially is packed with extensive detail, perfect recreations, and fake book titles. And if you've been on this channel since the beginning, you know I love my fake book titles. And even if you balk at the wait times, if you spring for the power-up band, there's another whole layer of games you could play, items to collect, and areas to explore. The Donkey Kong Country Miniland is another great place to take a breather. I got emotional walking into this much calmer subset, not because of the relative quiet, but because again, it was like stepping right into the game. One that I got for Christmas over 30 years ago that holds a very special place in my consciousness. It's pretty, it's wonderfully landscaped, and despite its size, it still has little nooks and crannies of DK's jungle that you can explore. Super Nintendo World as a whole really is a remarkable achievement, so don't take my relative lack of footage as a knock. It was getting late, and we needed to eat. Even the shops and the restaurants have more to take in, if you're taking your time. Exhibit A, of course, is the Moonship Chocolates Candy Shop, fearlessly led by Chocolate Bear mascot Captain Cacao. But Captain Cacao isn't just something to slap on a box. He, of course, has an entire backstory. And if you inquire with one of the team members within, they'll gladly fill you in on the lore. Do we need a candy store with a backstory? Maybe you don't think so. Pizza Moon, Epic Universe's premier pizza joint, doesn't just have an entire backstory. They have people called Moonwalkers whose entire job is to walk around the restaurant and regale guests with said backstory. The cynic may think, what's the point? But we sat beside 2 tables of teenage kids who were obsessed with our Moonwalker, Jacob. They were competing for his attention. It's silly, yeah, but all of this is what makes a theme park a theme park. You could go to Epic Universe and just run from ride to ride, eat your food and get out of the restaurant and run to a store to grab a shirt and leave. And honestly, we've grown so accustomed to doing that, I wouldn't blame you. But really, if you have to compare the 2 ways to experience a park, is that the best way to do it? When I got back from Epic Universe, the initial review from Hater-Ass Christina that Epic Universe was overrated, it started to make more sense. She went on to clarify that her biggest issues were that everything was too spread out and the waits were too long. Going on to say that her kids thought the Ministry of Magic was, and I quote, mid, because they didn't care at all about the source material. In a world where we've been conditioned to treat these parks like checklists, I finally understood that criticism. Epic Universe wants us to slow down. It forces us to slow down, whether it's due to the physical distance between attractions or the downtime or the long waits. But at the end of the day, does the average guest want to slow down? Are they going to be unhappy if they can't do everything in a day? Are they going to see any value in exploring the Ministry of Magic in all of its stunning glory, a towering testament to engineering, creativity, and design? Or are they going to think it's just mid? There's no argument that the creative is amazing and the attractions are almost all widely regarded as triumphs. But that alone isn't what makes this park special. It's arguably only half of it. And that's the thing that I wasn't expecting upon my first visit. Now, I understand that this opinion on the park is going to have its criticisms. The fact that I'm suggesting people can enjoy it and that it's worth a visit, even without going on all the rides, will almost certainly be met with accusations of rationalizing the problems or of giving Universal a pass in areas that I wouldn't ever give to Disney. And while I'd absolutely love for people to see it my way, not just for Epic's success, but for the state of parks in general, it seems very plausible that, at minimum, half the guests are just not going to care. It's nothing against them, but it's an indictment of how, over the past 2 decades or so, these parks have fundamentally changed our behaviors. Maybe for good. As we wrap this up, let's go back to Joe Rohde for his thoughts. These were his takeaways. A point I consider very important, which we tried to do with Disney's Animal Kingdom. The simple notion that a park is first a park, not a frantic highway of people rushing to and fro to try and ping off hyped attractions. That a park is not based on huge mega draws, but on a whole mixture of small, intimate interactions, the value of which cannot be measured using typical metrics. And the principle that a world, imaginary or not, has levels, and this is what makes it seem real, and argues against a fixation on monumental installations at the expense of detail and ambiance. Well said, Joe. You get it. And if Universal is right, the general public will too. Epic Universe is a callback to the glory days of theme parks. Despite its bombastic attractions, its breathtaking shows, and its world-class technology, above all, Epic Universe is an absolute masterclass in stopping and smelling the roses. Hopefully the guests won't trample them first.